Welcome to In Their Voices. Today I have the opportunity and the joy to speak with Joyce Odidison. Welcome, Joyce.
Michael, thank you so much for having me here today. It's my pleasure to spend this time with you.
Great. And tell us a little bit, provide a little bit of background for the viewers so they know who you are. Some of them may know you from a variety of other places, but just say a little bit about your background and who you are, please.
Well, I have been in this field for 24 years. I've been a conflict analyst, and my work has allowed me to work with organizations providing a range of solutions to difficult and challenging situations. And through that journey, I have come to recognize that the conflicts that we encounter in our life has such a significant impact on our well-being. And over the years, I have moved my work over to the whole concept of wellness improvement and really been working on developing, taking on the thought leadership on the role of wellness competencies in our life and in our work. And I've done some work on the wellness competency mindset, teaching that I think is so important in a time like now where we are facing such unrest, such turmoil with COVID-19 and race relations, that we need to talk about wellness, and we need to talk about mindset, and we need to talk about competencies, because many ask the question, well, are we still here? So that's a little bit about my background. I own Interpersonal Wellness Services, Inc. I've been president of that company now for 24 years. And we work with corporations, we work with provincial, federal government, we work in public-private sectors. And I also host a podcast called What's Happening at Work, as well as I host the annual Global Workplace Wellness Summit that's coming up this November. We're going to be doing it virtually this year. And I think as many other large functions will be. And yeah, so it's been my pleasure to be here with you.
Great, thank you. And we're going to be talking about your notions of wellness.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe one of the first things is to let viewers understand that when you talk about wellness, you're talking about human wellness, not just about wellness in a medical context of physical wellness.
No, I think I should probably commandeer and share my screen, if you don't mind, for a brief moment, just to introduce the Wellness Improvement System model. So when I talk about the wellness competency mindset, I've been very fortunate to have been able to create a model that provides color and diagram and dimensions to give a quick visual of what it is that we talk about wellness. So let me share that for a bit. And if you give me an opportunity to share my screen, you'd have to give me permission. I could share that, and then.
How I do that?
Okay, so you go up to share screen, and you make me a host, make me a co-host, and then.
I'll make you a host. There you go.
All right.
You are now the host.
Okay, excellent. All right. I hope that doesn't affect your recording. Actually,
no, the recording is just fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So this is the Wellness Improvement System model that I've been blessed and fortunate to create to share the whole concept of wellness competency mindset. And everything we do in our life is come from a thought, and we have to have a mindset around it. And we have moved away from wellness in our society and in our workplace to such an extent that we forget that the things we do, the words we speak, our actions does impact our cells, impact us as a cellular level. And I had watched David I had watched so many times that people were coming in to see me, and they were having angina, and they were having their diabetes was out of control, and their blood pressure was out of control, and it was due to the conflict that they were having. And so this got me curious to wanting to share with them what was happening in their bodies and in their minds, and how important it is for them to do something about it. And I created this multidimensional model, and I call it the wellness improvement system from my conflict analyst perspective, looking at how do we improve what we have, how do we improve on it. And I created the 9 dimensions: the spiritual, the social, the emotional, the occupational, the intellectual, environmental, financial, and physical. And at the core is the interpersonal. And we sometimes don't see conflict and interaction as such interconnected part of it. But when we are in conflict, there is a physiological um, aspect to it. Our breathing is changed. Our breath gets different. Our blood vessels are constricted. we think we don't think clearly. The blood flow to our brain is reduced, and there is a physiological um, impact when we are in conflict. We are more in a fight or flight mode when we're in conflict. So there is conflict is biology. It affects our biology. And so it's really important for us to start thinking wellness, moving away from that whole interpersonal conflict to start creating interpersonal wellness and relational well-being. Those are the things that I talk and teach about now. And from a conflict analyst perspective, I view conflict as an opportunity to create well being and dialogue again. And that allows me to work with my clients differently on a more holistic perspective. And it's funny, I want to share with you when I started designing this model, I was terrified. I'm like, I'm a corporate trainer. How do I go to the corporations and tell them I have a spiritual dimension in my model? That was something I wrestled with, and I tried to remove it. I said, I worked with the designer. Let's remove spiritual. I tried everything, and this model wasn't perfect until we had spiritual directly where it is, the first thing you see. And in my research and work and my interaction with other speakers and trainers and researchers, I've come to realize that the spiritual, and in my own spiritual journey, it is such a huge element of the workplace, but it's not spoken about. It's not identified, it's not named. And so what we don't acknowledge often controls us. So we spend billions of dollars annually doing style profiles and personality assessment and all that. So when we look at the spiritual realm, what we're going to notice is self-esteem, personal style. That's what we're trying to figure out when we're doing these assessments to see if the person is the right fit. What we're really trying to do is, do they have the right spiritual maturity or growth, or are they at that spiritual level that resonates with ours? That's what we're looking. We are essentially spiritual beings, and we having physical experience, and we don't recognize that. We're not putting it in the context that it needs to be. And that's why we're having so much conflict, because we're disconnected with ourselves. Therefore, we're disconnected with each other. And that's why we're having so much conflict.
So there's an inauthentic, people are inauthentic then. And one of the
Yes.
things that is part of your notion about spirituality, because it's not about religion.
No, absolutely not. It's just a little element. It's just one way to express your spirituality. Religion
Because
is
you indicate that that one of the competencies or the competency associated with spirituality is integrity.
integrity. Yes. And in my work, as I continue teaching this model, I was looking at how are we improving it, because that's why it's called wellness improvement. It's like, how are we improving it? We're doing the mindset shift. We're doing the wellness mindset shift, and we're starting to look at all how well am I doing in all of these areas, and how what I'm doing in this area impact my overall wellness? And that's the wellness mindset that we wanted to do. And then we realized, well, when I'm improving, how do I measure it? What change? What are we looking at? And that's when the competencies became part of it. And with the competencies, we start to notice what people were developing as they became more aware of their purpose, as they start working on their self-esteem. Who am I? What am I about? Are my core values? What are the values that are important to me? How do they resonate? How do I connect with? What are my beliefs? How do I put them in context to create balance in my life so that they resonate in everything that I do? Right? Am I religious? Do I need religion to express my spirituality? If so, how do I do it? What is faith means to me? How do I have faith in myself and my ability and in God if I believe in God? How do I move to the next level? How do I align my values and stay consistent with that, grow in that? Hope and trust. How do I express that? And how does that become part of my makeup, and to what level? And as we work with this, we came to recognize that there are 8 levels of wellness that one can attain in each of these dimensions. So you can be from level 1 in spiritual wellness to level 8. When you're at a level 1, what we notice is that you have a wellness deficit, meaning that you are overdrawn in your spiritual wellness account, and now you're withdrawing from that bank account what you don't have, and now you need to start working to improve it so you get to that place where you're no longer at a overdrawn. And we can do that in all of these dimensions. Just like we can be overdrawn in our bank account, we can financially, we can be overdrawn in each of these dimensions. And so as we work with our clients, as we work to help them to become aware of these elements, and these elements are here just because I wanted to give people some context. We could put far more words into all of these dimensions. There are so many more elements in spiritual wellness, so many more to social wellness, so many more to emotional wellness and occupational wellness. But these are the ones I put in there just to give my client a start, to help them, to give them a framework and a context to start thinking about spiritual wellness, social wellness, emotional wellness, occupational wellness. What are some elements of that? How well am I doing in those areas? And how does that help me as a
And also,
person to grow and develop?
and I would imagine that one of the reasons that you do that as well, Joyce, is because we're unique. And even though we need all wellness in all of these dimensions, the manifestation of that, the way in which it shows in us, the way in which we live our lives day in and day out are going to be utterly unique for each of us.
Absolutely. It is so true. And that's one of the reasons why I share this model when I start talking, so people have a visual context. Because when you measure your spiritual wellness, if you were to measure your self esteem, you're going to be thinking of the elements in your life. How well are you doing in self esteem? The elements you're going to assess, and this is self-assessment, by the way, the elements you're going to assess are going to be unique to you. They're going to be your own experience, your own interpretation of what that is. And that's what makes this so powerful, is that we are working on our own well-being. We are looking at what personally helps me to be the very best that I can be.
Because you're taking concepts that like lots of concepts can seem insubstantial or vague or undefined, and you help each person find their own definition for those. For you, if you were working with me, you would help me understand, for example, what are my core values? What are my
Exactly.
fundamental beliefs? What shapes how I engage with the world and with others?
That's exactly, Michael, because I developed this concept within a a coaching mindset sort of framework where the model adapts to the client rather than the client fitting into the model. So your values are unique to you. What are the things that you value? What are the things that allow you to make sense of the world, that allow you to know when you're living in balance? How do you know that you've arrived there? That's uniquely yours. And that's what makes this so powerful. And when we work with clients, the speed at which they get transformation, the speed at which they arrive at where they want to go was absolutely, I think, the greatest surprise. Because initially, when I would work with clients, I'd be working with them months and months, and we would be working broadly. But when I give them this model, and from this model, I've created the wellness assessment, which now is broken down. Each of these dimensions is broken down into assessment worksheets that they can now go through individually and write on, or they can go through it virtually online. And that gives them some context, and they get to ask themselves, how well am I doing in self-esteem? What does self-esteem mean to me? How does that work in my life? How did I develop my self-esteem, and what does it look like? So they get to personalize. And so we're seeing clients who we've been working with, after a second session, they're like, I got it. I'm moving. I've got results. I feel like I've been working on this for a year. And we just smile, because it is their subconscious have all this information, and this just gives them a framework to shift their mindset and give permission to them to look at the things that they have been ignoring at a subconscious level. It's fascinating.
And isn't that one of the I mean, you are multidimensional. You know, you talked about being a conflict
Oh,
handler. You're a
mhm,
coach. You're an
mhm.
educator. Um,
Yes.
you're a thinker.
Mhm,
Um, and
mhm.
one of the things about coaching, as I understand it, especially as I understand it as a mediator,
Mhm.
the similarity is the notion that the answers lie within the person. I'm not
Excellent.
so smart that I can tell somebody what the answer is for them. And that seems to be one of the fundamental principles of your work.
It is. It really is. Because I can tell you what to do, but my brain, when we think of the brain, right? Neuroscience has taught us a lot about the brain. We know that we can look at the brain under the mind, and the brains look the same, but the wiring is uniquely based on our individual experience. So me telling you this is the perfect answer for you, Michael, and you figuring out the perfect answer for yourself is completely different, right? It may be that you had to go over here and come back there for it to be perfect. And I think because I tell you it's perfect, you should just stay it's perfect and go. No, it has to fit with your brain. It has to fit with you, your experience, and giving the client permission to be, to take on his life in a very take on that authority and autonomy for who he is and who she is and what they bring to the world is so important. And this model allows us to do that. And as we built on it, I was able to create the assessment so they could assess how well they're doing in each of the dimension. And then from there, they get to decide where they want to start developing. Because I could very well say, oh, you should start working on your spiritual wellness because the model is that way. And I'm like, and I was like, who made me king? Right? And so when they come and they've gone through the assessment, they say, where would you like to start doing some improvement? And actually, I don't even get, most times I don't get to that point. They come back and, in the next call, and they're like, Joyce, I don't like my numbers. I don't like my numbers. How do I improve these numbers? How do I change these numbers? And I'm like, great question. You have the power to change it up or down, wherever you choose to. And the nice thing about this, too, one of the critical things about this is that they start to recognize that wellness is dynamic, it's not static. And you could be doing really, really well financially, and then you lose your job, or you've had a major illness, or something happen, and then you're not there. So How do you improve that? How do you get back on track? And we talk about resilience and starting over. And it's just the conversations are so powerful and so human that it makes it so much fun and such a pleasure to do this work. Because when clients look at their lives as from a space of dynamic that reminds them, we say, you know what, you have done this assessment. So we get them to do the assessment before we start working with them, and then they get to do the assessment at the end to see the how far they've come, how much of an investment have I made on in myself, and what results have I got, what changes, what has improved, has my perspectives changed, has my understanding of who I am changed. And that could be up or down. There's no right or wrong. It's you have a deeper awareness, or maybe you're asking for more from yourself. Maybe you have a higher level or higher standard for yourself, and that could very well be the new reflection in your scores. And so we give the clients permission to explore themselves, to ask themselves bold questions. And from this, I went ahead and took each of the chapters and created what I call the Wellness Improvement Coaching Toolkit. And in that, each of the dimensions in the assessment now ties into a chapter on some rich questions that goes deeper and some reflections and insight, and how would you change that, and where would you start working, and breaking down all the elements. And the clients love it because they can take it and reflect on it and work on it and come back and say, wow, I learned so much. This has been so powerful. So that has always been a tremendous blessing to see how this work has impacted people's lives.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And just what I'll mention is at the end of our conversation, in the closing credits, we'll provide viewers with information so that they can get in touch with you, so they can learn more about the wellness improvement system and your entire approach. So,
Oh, absolutely. Okay, thank you. I
because I'm
appreciate
sure
that.
that people watching this are going to have, as I did when I first began to read your materials, hundreds of questions, um, uh, both at the personal level, about how would this impact me, and
Mhm,
and for me looking at it as a mediator, as a conflict analyst
mhm.
as well, and saying how would this impact my work with my clients. So people watching this,
Tremendous.
Joyce, are going to have hundreds of questions, and we'll provide them some links so that they can get in touch with you and learn more.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I have I've done many articles on this. We have the assessment, the wellness improvement. We have the assessment for it. We also have and everything is based on around that wellness competency mindset, because we know it's both. It's the mindset and it's also developing the competencies. We've created a coach training. We have a ICF approved coach training program where I teach coaches on becoming wellness competency mindset coaches. And we do a facilitator program for those who just want to use the assessment with their clients already. They don't want to become coaches, or they're already coaches, but they just want to get this assessment. And a lot of professionals say, Joyce, I just want to be able to use this with my clients because everything it covers, it gives them such a framework, a launching pad. And I think that's what it is. We want to give our clients a launching pad so that they can be successful. We can go off and live their lives for them. We don't have the luxury of controlling and say, this is what you should do, but we want to give them tools. Our job is to equip them with the tools, the knowledge, and the skills to live better lives. And I get to do that every day, and that gives me pleasure.
And Joyce, one of the things I'm interested in, among many, is how you got to the development of this. Two influences you spoke about were the fact that you are a coach as well as a trainer of coaches, and you're a conflict analyst. And so those are both conceptual as well as practical kinds of things that are part of who you are as you deal with clients, as you think about things. Are there other influences that have shaped how you got to, how you came up with the idea that there are 9 dimensions, not 4, not 6, but you found 9? And I'm not suggesting that it's a magic number, just simply that that's a number that's a group of competency, of dimensions that matter to you. And for each, there's a competency as well. How did that come about?
You know, Michael, it didn't happen overnight. I could just be like, but I could say it was a divine inspiration and a deeper awareness of paying attention to what's working with my clients, what was giving them results. Because I've been blessed to have the opportunity to work with some of the most resistant and hard to reach clients. And I remember when I started my conflict resolution practice, a client had a heart attack in my office.
Oh, no.
And things resonate with you. That sat with me. And that was actually what got me doing the work that I did in pre-mediation. And I think the pre-mediation concept that I did and the book I wrote on pre-mediation and it was a coaching framework. I didn't express it that openly, but it was a way to start bringing people to a place of reflection before we bring them together in a conflict, in a mediation session to start negotiating. I felt that people were not, they were not spiritually and emotionally aligned or balanced to be in that mediation session. And that's what pre-mediation is about. It was about moving them back and getting them to do that self-reflection and that shift, that mindset shift from fight to awareness, appreciation, negotiation, solution, resolution. And that's what it was. And that work, that early work from pre-mediation, what was the beginning. And I created the pre-mediation framework. I was a series of questions and worksheets that got, and that book is still being sold today. It's sold all across the world. And I still get orders for it. And really, that was my first, I think, move into recognizing. And I've always been a spiritual person. I've always been, I'm a Christian, but I've always been, besides being a Christian, I've always been a spiritual person. Religion has never been a dictator of my spirituality. It has been a vehicle I've used to express my spirituality, one of the vehicles. So, and there's a difference. And I think sometimes we get confused about that. And when I've always looked at myself as a spiritual being and being here for a purpose. And if you look in the spiritual dimension, one of the things there, it's purpose. What is my purpose? What am I here to do? I'm a big believer of legacy. And so when I leave this planet, it will take people years to finish reading what I leave behind. And that's what I tell myself. And my goal is to, my legacy is to take whatever divine download that comes to me and put it in a context that's usable, that's learnable, and that's transformational for those I connect with or come into contact with. That's been my goal, and that is my desire. And so as we go through, as I work with clients, as I teach and I train my coaches, and they work and they become enlightened and they take this on to work with their clients and to do their own facilitation, I'm part of this growing rippling effect, and I'm like, hallelujah, that's my goal. How much people can, my goal is to impact millions and give them the opportunity to have that heightened level of awareness. What I've noticed with the wellness improvement system model, which we use as the framework for the wellness competency mindset teaching, is that people who encounter this model must have some deep thinking. I remember working with women who were in shelter, And they said, we're having counseling for these women. Why don't you come in and do some coaching for them? And I used this model to teach. And at the end, one of the women stood up and she said, for the first time in my life, and this is someone with a grade 5 education. These women have, they've had a tough life. And she said, for the first time in my life, I now know why things happen to me. Why, why one thing impacts another. And I just thought bad things were happening. I didn't realize that when I'm not doing well spiritually, or I'm not doing well intellectually, it affects my ability to grow, in my professional life, occupationally, and that impacts my spiritual well-being and my emotional well-being and my financial and physical. She's like, for the first time in my life, I now know why the things are happening to me and how I can be part of that change and solution. And that is what I live to do, is to create a deep level of awareness for those I encounter so they can see that you have control. You can make some changes in your life. You can improve how well you're doing in any of these dimensions, and thereby you can move your level of wellness from wellness deficit all the way up to optimal wellness or somewhere in between. And because it's a system of wellness, and I'm going to just share it one more time, because it's a system of wellness, what usually happens is that when you start working on any one of these dimensions to improve how well you are, just like any good system, everything else changes. Everything is moved. Everything changes. So you start working spiritually, you're going to see growth. Physically, you're going to see emotional, you're going to see impact in all of the other dimensions. So it doesn't matter where a client starts working in this model, we trust the process, knowing that they're going to benefit in all of the dimensions. And as they keep working, that's why we don't set any rule. There is no criteria of where you start working. Where do you want to start working? Where do you want to have the first impact? Where do you want to start chipping away at things? That's where you start.
Yeah. Can I ask you something, Joyce?
Absolutely.
If you don't mind. And it's fine. We can leave the screen up for a minute, or as long as you choose. But as I'm listening to you talk about how you develop this idea, and as you say, it doesn't spring from your forehead, just full blown. It's an evolutionary process. Mm-hmm. The two things stood out to me as I listened to you. One is that as a spiritual person yourself, it shapes things in two respects. And this is a question, not a statement. It's an observation, and I'm wondering if it's relevant. One is, that's why spiritual for you is the first dimension.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because it comes out of your values, your beliefs, your sense of what matters in this life.
Absolutely.
And the second thing that comes through to me is that all of this is built around self-actualization.
Absolutely.
Again, growing out of how you describe spirituality and what it means to you. Not just your Christianity, not just your religion, but the manifestation of the practice of your religion, of your spiritual beliefs, is expressed in the work that you do in wellness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because everything we do, and because I'm a Christian, I believe in God and I believe in creation. And God said, at the end of each day of creation, He said it is good. Right? And the evening and the morning was the first day, and God looked at what He did, and we were created to be good. We were created to be well, right? And we've taken away the wellness or the spiritual element of all of these areas of our life, and we've become so disconnected with who we are. And I often say to organizations, I'm here to bring humanity back to the workplace. Because where humanity is, spirituality is. Because we are spiritual beings. And we've become so caught up in this consumerism and this negative competition and the more and the more and we've lost ourselves. We've lost our focus. We've lost our purpose. And look at where we are with COVID-19 and the worst race relation, the most heinous act of murder we've ever seen with our own eyes in our living rooms. It's been horrific and played over and over and over. That will change our brain forever. It's unbelievable that we are still here as a human race.
But you
It
have
breaks
optimism.
my heart.
But as it breaks your heart, you also have a heart that's filled with hope and optimism. Am I right?
Absolutely. 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 That's why I do this work. If I believe we will pass any point of development, I would not be be doing this work. It's because I know we have the capacity. Our brain is neuroplastic. We can change our brain based on our mindset. If we start looking at when I hurt my brother, when I hurt one person, I hurt myself, then we start realizing that pain and hurt brings discomfort and unwell. And so when we are well, we're in harmony with each other. We want to care for each other. We want to see how each other are doing. We want to reach out to each other. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But when we're unwell, we want to fight with each other. We want to curse each other. We want to kill each other. That's unwell.
We lose our capacity for empathy.
Of course.
Yeah.
We become inhumane.
And do you see this happening now, not just with the race relations, which is such a powerful and frightening in a way to me, frightening because of what it represents in human beings, not frightening in terms of violence. I'm talking about at a human level. But the impact of COVID-19 on our capacity to be empathetic, to be connected with others, to our sense of wellness, any of those components. Do you see that COVID-19 is having an impact on people's wellness, not just their physical wellness, that sense of well-being?
You know what, Michael? For the first time in human history, we actually recognize that if we're not well, we don't have a society. We don't have an economy. We don't have a workplace. This has actually given me more impetus to do the work that I do, because we recognize that wellness is important. And without wellness, we don't have a society. We should be putting more money, more energy towards well-being, towards sustaining and creating well-being and shifting to a mindset of wellness. If we don't do that, if COVID-19 hasn't taught us that, then there's no hope for us as a human race. Because why did we all go buckled up in our house? Because COVID-19 was impacting the people with lowered immunity. So that means there's only one disease, a sickness of the cell. When our cells are weak and sick, they're vulnerable and we can become sick. So if we were well, if we were a society where we were well, we were taking care of each other, we were taking care of ourselves, we were eating normal food that God created instead of all these artificial stuff we're feeding ourselves. If we were living with balance, we had spiritual well-being in our life, relational well-being, we wouldn't be in the state that we are, where so many lives are being, so many people become vulnerable. And when the WHO came out, they said COVID-19 are going to affect those with lowered immune system. And it did. It did. And some people we didn't know, who didn't look like they had lowered immune system, On the outside, we wouldn't know, but that's how we are. You can't see me and know if I'm well, right? It's
Right.
because wellness is so multidimensional, so multidimensional. So I want to give you an example. My mom is was um, she was diagnosed with liver cancer in November and had major surgery. My mom has always been special need. She was born with the inability to hear very well. And so she's lived with a lot of assumptions, and she's had anxiety, depression. So she's had a very, she has, she doesn't have the normal emotional regulation like normal people, and can be very, she can lash out. So she has a very turbulent, she's lived a very turbulent life. And there are four of us. I left at 19, immigrated to Canada, and lived here. And then my husband and I decided to sponsor my mom to Canada. And so my mom lives in Canada with us. But she's always been high needs, so she lived on her own. We tried initially when she came here to have a live with us, but we had to put her on her own. But she was in her 50s, so she lived on her own and she managed her life and everything. And I encouraged her to go back to school. And I mean, she's always been ambitious and hardworking, and she's tried. But now she's in her 70s, and she was diagnosed with a liver cancer, and she was living alone. And I look at my husband and I said, oh, I'm going to have to do what I promised myself I would never do, bring my mom to live with us. And so we brought her in to live with us. It's my husband, my son, and I, and we're okay. And I have the most accommodating husband and son, so I wasn't worried. And but then my aunt, my mom's younger sister, took her off to Tennessee. She was there for a few months to visit because she's the first of 11 children, and so she was spending time with them. And anyway, we brought her back just after when she could fly at the end of April. We brought her back home, and the change, and then she got her results and recognized that the cancer was still growing, and she started lashing out, and my husband is very sensitive, is very kind, very accommodating, very gentle and loving, and um, but he comes in and he feels the tension because my mom complains. If there are 24 hours of the day, she will complain 25. It's always a complaining, and she refuses to eat, and so it's been. And then my husband got the flu, and then I got it because we're trying to manage and maintain some form of normalcy. We've always managed a happy home, positiveness. I mean, look at what I do. I know, and so I know it's because of that energy that's coming, and so I've been now in the process of, okay, Joyce, you know what you need to do. You need to shift your mindset, and you need to start recognizing, and you need to start moving, and there are things you can't control, and so brought in all the support for her with palliative care and the nurses and social work, and just relieve myself. And so it's interesting how when one area of your life is in turbulence, and this was something we planned. It's the same as if you planned on moving across the country, or you planned on renovating your house, and so our lives are multidimensional. But what happens in one dimension affects what's happening in the other. And so you ask yourself, why am I vulnerable? Why did we? And he is, you know, he's more sensitive than me. He got the flu. I said, do you have COVID? You need to go get tested. And he did. And it's like, wasn't. And I look at it and I said, but I know what's happening. And I know I have been off balance because of this negative energy and turmoil. And I had taken on control in trying to protect my husband and my son from it. And so in my devotion and my own wellness practice and competencies, I went back to integrity and said, this is not my issue. My mom is okay. We know she has emotional and mental health issues. I knew that there was going to be some disruption. Why am I so upset about it? Why am I getting sick over it? So I've had to have that talk with myself and go back and look, okay, what's off balance, and how do I get myself back regulated and tied back in? And there's such a peace that come with it. I couldn't talk. And I started talking. My voice is clear. I can even have this conversation without coughing. It has been such a transition. But everything starts with the mindset. And I had to go back and do that wellness mindset shift to say, okay, there are some things that I have no control over. This is our territory, and we create our home the way we want to, and we have certain things. They said, we're caregiving. And this is something we chose to do. And there was no, it didn't come with a prescription and say it was going to be perfect, right? And we knew that there were going to be some turmoil, but we also know how to manage it. So why are we getting all flustered? And why am I even paying attention? And so I had to go back and do that. And what often happens in those situations that we lose focus, we step out of our spiritual connection, and we look at the behavior, and we look at, that person needs to change their behavior. And it's not my mom who has to change her behavior. My mom is not ever going to change. It's me and my husband that have to change our expectation and what we want to pay attention to and how we want to look at it. And so I had to go back and do the work that I know that I do with my clients. There are times we need to
I
take
know.
a dose of our own medicine, right?
Right, right.
And that has been, and I've been looking over the days of the transformation, and as I go through that, and I've just been chuckling at myself. I'm like, you know what to do. Why don't you just do it? But you have to, when you're in the situation, when you're in the conflict, when you're in the situation where it's happening, right? You need to remove yourself and go back now and say, what's happening? What's shifting my wellness zone? What's taking me from an 8 to a 2? Where is that deficit? And how do I address that? And that and how does that align with integrity of who I am? And so now going back to that place of integrity, um, as in practicing integrity at the level 8 is the thoughts I have around it. She cannot control herself. She lacks the emotional regulation to deal with the things that life are bringing to her. But I do. I have it. So why am I even paying attention to it? Or you know, why am I not making this choice or that choice or having this thought? And it goes back to the thought. And I'm like, it's all about the thought I'm having about it. It's bad behavior. And um, she was showing up, and I had on a Zoom call with her sisters, and they saw the lashing out, and they were very upset. And I went out of myself and took on their upset. And I'm like, that's not your stuff. They're upset. You you read they're upset and they talk to you upset. It's like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. It is what it is. And we're okay. We're okay.
Good.
And we're well. And the whole energy changed.
And you see, we're going to stop in just a couple of minutes, unfortunately,
Hmm.
at least for this time, but
Absolutely.
hopefully there'll be another. But what I take away from
Hmm.
that difficult story that you told, and I appreciate your sharing something that is so intimate and personal, that what I take away as representative of the work that you do is that fundamental human resilience that,
Hmm.
that you were able to access. It's what you teach, it's what you help others learn to do, because if they can access that, then it gives them the strength to be able to analyze what's in front of them and decide what, and problem solve to figure
Hmm.
out what can and
Absolutely.
can't be done.
Absolutely. And you notice where resilience is based in the model.
In the
It's in
center.
the core of the model, right? In that interpersonal, that is actually where resilience is based. Everything we do, every time we pick ourselves up, it's because we love someone. It's because of the relationship. It's because I want this person, or I want this for that person. Or that's where the resilience comes from.
Right.
If the core of resilience is on human interpersonal relationships, we will do things for people that we wouldn't even do for ourselves. Mhm.
Joyce, you have done something for me for which I am deeply grateful, and that's to share this time with me and to share your thoughts and your experiences and the wisdom of 24 years of developing and teaching and adjusting and evolving the wellness improvement system. And I'm very, very grateful. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope it's of value to those who see it.
I believe it will be. Thanks.
Okay.